Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan, and this is Not Just Cute, the podcast, where we discuss all kinds of topics relating to intentional whole child development and supporting the critical work of parents and teachers of young children. If you haven't met Deborah Stewart yet, I am so excited to be the one to introduce her to you. Deb writes at Teach Preschool at teachpreschool.org and runs a huge, brilliant Facebook page by the same name. But one thing that sets Deb apart from many preschool blogs is that she's also essentially running her own lab preschool called the Children's Studio. This is where she not only teaches, but also observes, documents, and studies early learning as it happens, so that she can share those observations and reflections all around the world through her blog. She's a master teacher who's been in the early childhood field for over 30 years. And her passion for play-based, hands-on learning is evident in everything she does. I've known and collaborated with Deb for years, and finally got to meet up with her in person this past year as we both presented at the State AEYC conference in Ohio. And I am here to tell you, she is just as delightful in person, 100% authentic. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Deb and her work, and I'm just so excited to have you hear from her. In this episode, I asked Deb to join me for a conversation about how to choose the right preschool for your child. My hope is that what we share will help parents have more clarity and confidence in making this sometimes overwhelming decision, and that it will also help schools to help parents in that process as well. You can find the show notes for this episode at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 14. And you'll want to make sure you check that out because along with links to Deborah's site, book, and Facebook page, you'll also find out how to download a free quick reference guide for helping you ask the right questions as you choose the best preschool setting for your child. That's all at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 14. All right, let's jump in. Hi, Deb. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm really excited about what you're going to share.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be here, too.
So as the new year starts out, I know a lot of parents are looking into preschools for the following academic year, and so I thought this would be a great time to talk about a common question that I get. I'm sure you've heard the same thing. What do I look for when I'm choosing a preschool for my child? And I think on the flip side of that is for the early childhood professionals, what are parents looking for, right, when they come to visit my school? And I think you are uniquely qualified not only as an outstanding early childhood professional, but as a mom and a grandma, you've got all those vested interests. So, Deborah, I'm excited to hear what comes first to mind to you when somebody says, what should I be looking for? What's the first thing you think of?
Well, this might surprise you a little bit, but the first thing I think of is you need to be looking near you. What's most convenient? Besides all, there's so many aspects of a school that we think about, but location is really critical when it's preschool because a lot of these moms have really young children at home, and trying to get there on time and on a daily basis, morning and then turning around, coming back in the afternoon. A lot of them are going to be driving and dropping off and picking up. Location is really something to help narrow down your choices. If you think about where would it really work for me to go, start there, and then you're going to explore, well, what are the choices in this area? If there's nothing, then you'll work your way away from there. But it'll help you to just get to know what's in your area.
I think that's such a great point because as parents, we want to give our kids the moon, right? But we have to start with reality and not run ourselves or our kids into the ground in this, the commute of going to and from school. That can be hard for our lives, our family life, but even for our child to spend that much time in the car or in an unfamiliar area. It's nice when it's something that they know it's near this familiar place or someplace that they've been before. That's a great point I hadn't thought of.
And there's other advantages that they're going to have. If it's in a neighborhood or in an area you live, chances are your child's going to make friends, want to attend birthday parties. You're going to want to carpool on occasion. You're going to want to maybe even volunteer or be at the school every once in a while. And the further away it is, the more difficult it will become to connect with others and be a part of the program. And you want to think about that. So your child's going to be there for probably, 2 to 3 years, depending on what age your child goes. So you want to think about the long term of, is this in a location that will really help foster a sense of community for us, help us be involved with our friends and be able to be involved in other ways. So, and as your child then, of course, then proceeds to move on to the next level of school, a lot of the friends in that school hopefully would be able to go to the same school in elementary. So your child will already be connected to children that he's already gotten to know, he or she. So there's a lot of good reasons to look local.
That's a great point. And like I said, I think really easily overlooked. I'm glad you brought that up. So what's the next thing that you think of?
Well, then we're going to talk about what you're looking for. So the first thing you want to do is kind of ask for some referrals. We are in the process of doing enrollment in our school as well. And it is, and 90% of them come from referrals, from parents who refer their friends to us. So you want to ask around, find out who, where your friends or people that you know and trust are sending their child. But just because they're sending their child there doesn't mean it's right for your child. So don't go on that alone, but definitely use it as a way to kickstart your look. And then once you've kind of got some referrals, then you can go and maybe look online and see if the schools have information online, so you can kind of get your mind, if this is brand new for you, your mind wrapped around what are their hours, how much do they cost, where are they located, when are they open, and all of the logistics of the schools. And a lot of them will even share a little bit about what their program is like, what their philosophy is like. And once you've kind of narrowed down, I'm interested in seeing some of these schools, then you're ready to begin actually reaching out to those schools and making some phone calls and see if you can't come and visit it or talk to someone.
I think you made a really good point in that part that while we're doing that groundwork of checking with other parents, like you said, it's so important to not get caught up in, but everybody else goes to this school, or she says that's the right school for her child, so it must be the right school for mine as well. That, like you mentioned, that we have to pay attention to that individual difference of our child. And I think we also have to pay attention to the different values or perceptions that we have as parents, because I know I've had situations where I've heard from other parents that they think a certain learning environment is outstanding based on criteria that I don't value.
Exactly.
So we have to make sure we don't get too swayed by, just the popular answer, which moms can feel a lot of that pressure that, everybody goes to this school, it must be the right answer, and it usually isn't.
And another, I think, common problem is, a lot of parents are guided by my daughter wants to be in school with her friend, and so you start looking at it in terms of trying to keep friends together. And I'm not saying that that's not a good thing. It can work in some cases. In other cases, it can be a little bit difficult, especially as a teacher. But you want. I don't want to say that that's not a good idea. I just want to say that you really want to get a feel for the school and make sure, regardless of who else goes there, who else is referred to you, it feels like a right fit for what you believe and for what's best for your child and your family.
Definitely. So you've gotten to this point where you're actually ready to start calling schools and making some visits. When you're actually on site coming to visit a school, what do you think parents should be looking for?
All right. So once you connect, you got to find out what kind of tour they're going to let you do. So it depends on when you go. If you go and there's children in school and they allow you to come while school is in action, that's probably the best thing you can do, so you can see it in action.
I agree.
If you can do that, then that's a wonderful place to start. But not all schools allow that, so you will have to find out. So it depends on which one you do. So let's say that you get to go and see the school in action. So one of the first things you want to think about is whether to bring your child with you or not. For that, sometimes you should ask the school whether it's appropriate to bring your child with you or not. But you need to keep in mind, depending on the time of the year, we're in January here, and we are at what I call the last half of our school year. So our students are starting to become at their most mature level. So if a parent comes in now with their 3-year-old, they're coming in and observing a 3-year-old class that is actually now probably all 4 or headed that direction. And so it can look as if they're too old, and you lose sight of that. You're not going to walk into a class that's the same age as your children.
That's a really great point.
Yeah, you're going to walk into where your children are going to be, not where they're currently at.
Right.
So it's really important to keep that in mind.
And it's where they're going to be in a year, and 1 year in early childhood can be drastic, really. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, sometimes when we have students come and visit us at 3, and they're barely 3 or they're turning 3 because they're not yet members, and they'll come and visit and they'll bring the little one, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this little one's so tiny. He's just a baby. He's not going to be ready. And then they'll come back when school's ready to start, and it's a different child. Like they grow so much from January all the way through the rest of the year, through the spring, and into the fall. And that's another thing to mention. A lot of parents are still wishy-washy about, and it's understandable, about whether they feel like their child is going to be ready, because they're still looking at their child at the age he is now. But there is so much growth that's going to happen between now and next fall. You've got an entire rest of the winter, summer, spring, and then spring and summer, and then they start, and so much growth happens. Then I'll have parents who call me, and their child is age eligible and has been, but now they see, oh, I should have signed him up. He was ready. I just didn't, or he's ready now. So you have to look ahead, and it would be better if you're considering preschool at all, and they get busy, full in your area, to sign up and then decide, no, I don't want to go, than to miss the open window of getting in on enrollment, because it's very hard later to get in. For some reason nowadays preschools get really full in a hurry.
They do. And like you said, it's so good to keep that option open, and not that you want to be flippant about it, but you can always pull back. You can't always jump back in.
Yeah, and so you want to just make sure you recognize that your child may not seem old enough yet, but if they're going to be age eligible, they will mature a lot in that time. And then everyone entering that classroom at that time will be the same age as your child, and they won't be like when you come to visit looking like they're babies with a bunch of big kids. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm trying to identify that for you. You're going to come, you're going to visit, you're going to see lots of kids that seem way bigger and more mature, and that's because they're a full year and maybe even more ahead, and they won't be the class your child is with. They're just modeling you're just there to see what the classroom potentially looks like. So you've got to keep that in mind. It's very important. Especially when you're dealing with moms who this is their first child, and they're really uncomfortable, and they just, feel insecure about the whole thing. They can get there and feel like, oh, my baby's just too little. And I understand that. So they just have to have that perspective put in place.
Yeah, that's a great thing to keep in mind. So what's next on your list?
All right, well, when you're going to set up a tour, here's some things to see if you can do. See if you can meet the teacher that's actually going to be teaching your child, and see if that teacher will have some time to speak with you. Find out all this before you show up, and see if the teacher will have time to speak with you, and if you're going to bring your child in and to speak with your child for a minute. See if you'll have time to see the classroom, watch the teacher in action for a little bit. Watch the children in action, visit the playground, visit the cafeteria if there's a cafeteria, or any other area that your child's going to be using during his or her time in that school. You want to just be able to put your eyes on it. You want to actually be able to walk through and see it, as well as see as the class in action. So you want to plan ahead a little bit and find out, what can I see while I'm there? That will help you then plan out what you need to ask versus what you can just observe it for yourself.
So what are some of the things that you're looking for as you're looking in those different areas, the classroom and the playground, or when you're visiting with a teacher? What are some of the things that you would hope to see? What are some red flags or some, definite things you would hope for.
Okay. So when you're in the classroom, here's some general observations, whether the kids are there or not. Does the classroom feel and look clean and organized? Does it just, I'm not talking about natural messiness of children where they've got toys scattered out, but does the overall classroom still feel and look clean and organized? Does it feel warm, inviting, clean, organized, and safe, just from your general impression? Or do you get in there and you're just like, there's something that gives you, sends you in the wrong, where you just don't feel comfortable with that. You need to know that now. And so, but you have to have your expectations of understanding that it is a children's classroom. So messiness, like paint on the table that's spilled, or blocks still on the floor or tipped over, that is actually a good thing. That means children are busy at play. Right. Something that's too clean, where there's not anything on the shelves and everything's under, very, very strict management, you need to know that that's probably a classroom that's not given enough freedom to express their own selves and play. So you want to find a happy middle. Does it just seem very comfortable and relaxed, clean, safe, but a playful environment? So you want to look at that, kind of get a general idea of that just by looking around the room. Do you see familiar and quality books available for children? Do you see books on a bookshelf that they can get to? And so we're going to just observe the room for that. Are there hands-on kind of child-friendly materials and supplies around the room? And are they placed down low at the child's level where the child can easily access them and explore them? And are there a variety of them? Do you see sensory play materials like sand table, a water table, an easel set up in the classroom? Is it open or is it closed? What time of day it is will make a difference too. Mm-hmm. If it's morning during their normal morning playtime, you hope to see those things open. Is there artwork hanging on the wall, and does it look child-made, or does it look like the teacher, arranged and fixed everything so that it's all perfectly the same? Or does it look like it represents the children's work? You want it to look like the children's work. And even if it's of nothing but beautifully displayed blobs of paint, that's wonderful. Mm-hmm. That means it's the child's work. That's what you're looking for. Can you see the children's names clearly displayed around the classroom? Are they on their cubbies? Do you see them in other places where the children are constantly getting to access to them and being encouraged to learn them? Does each child have a cubby and his own little personal space to put things away? And then are there things on the wall that, like classroom rules, are they posted? And what do they say? What do they tell you about this room, and what seems to be, why are they up there? And do they fit what your comfort zone is? If I were to go into a classroom and I would see what they call the red light, green light system, it would be a stoplight with one list of, kind of a line and then a green light, I would turn around and walk out of the classroom. I wouldn't put myself up there. I'm going to be honest with you. Because to me, that's not something that I want to see. I don't want to see my child's name up on any wall, or anybody's child, where they're identifying behavior as negative or positive. But I don't mind seeing if a teacher feels like a set of rules are on the wall for, just as a reminder of use walking feet. A lot of teachers do that. I will remind you the kids can't actually read it, but they still like to have them up there. But notice what's on the wall. Does it make sense? Is it facilitating a warm and inviting environment? Is it nurturing community? Is it cohesive to what you believe in discipline and child development in your own personal experience? And those are just some of the overall things I would look. I'm sure you have other ideas, things that you would look for in the overall look of the classroom.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of them. I think you really can, when you walk into just the environment of the classroom, I think you really can get quite a feel for the culture and the activities that take place and how things go. And I think you hit on a lot of the things about making sure that it's it's indicative of play. So there's different areas that you talked about, and that it's child size and from a child's perspective. And I think the one thing that I really wanted to emphasize, because so much of it was the same, but the one thing I really wanted to emphasize that you did hit on as well was, I think as parents, sometimes we can walk into an environment and be wowed by how beautiful and clean and put together, or even seemingly really child-friendly, but it's really very adultified, right? There's no ownership from the children, that sometimes it can look fantastic, but if we look for the ownership from the children, so like you said, their own artwork, and even some little messes in a few places, that if we don't see that, if it's too perfect, that to me that's a warning sign that it's overly controlled by adults.
Exactly. It's kind of the Pinterest effect. You know,
Right.
You see something on Pinterest, a beautiful recipe or a beautiful craft, and you sit down at home to make it, and it looks like crap, right? It doesn't look anything like it did on Pinterest. But Pinterest wowed you into thinking, this is amazing. But the reality of it is it was complicated, or it wasn't as everything that it was you hoped it would be. The same with the classroom. You want to look for the truth, the reality of the classroom. We know that children, a group of children, should be noisy. We know that they should be talking. We know that there should be some messes. We know that there should be things down at their level. We know the blocks probably should be crooked if it's right after playtime, not perfect. And if they're perfect, they probably didn't play with them. If they're perfect, they probably didn't put them away themselves. Mm-hmm. So use common sense and look around and just kind of notice, does this look like a place where children have played and played successfully, and then did their very best to help the teacher put it back together when they were done? But you see the evidence that it was child's work, whether it's on the walls, whether it's in the shelves, whether it's on the floor, wherever that may be. But is it also a room that's cared for? So the teachers don't have their clutter everywhere. They've taken the time to put their cups up out of reach, and their purses in a closet, and their paperwork isn't scattered all over one of the kids' tables, or whatever that may be. You want to think about, is this room set up for the children's needs, and is it approachable and does it and child friendly? I mean, it's just something you just have to kind of use your judgment, because you're going to not have much time probably to really sort through it. So you just have to kind of come in there and say, let me pick about 3 areas that matter to me the most, and that's what I'm going to look for.
Mm-hmm. So if you're in there, if you're lucky enough to be able to actually watch children and teachers, if you're watching that in the classroom, do you have some things on your list that address that, what you would be watching for in those interactions from the teacher or from the children?
Yes, if you get to go while the children are actually busy at play or in any time of the day. So let's say it's playtime, or what we often call center time. And it's indoors. You want to know, do you see the children making choices and exploring materials, or does things seem off limits? Are things closed? Or children not allowed to gravitate from one area to the next? They're kind of stuck in their spot until the teacher says they can move. We want the children to be able to have some freedom, the autonomy to go from place to place, to make choices and to decide for themselves where they want to participate during that time. So, but ultimately you're looking to see if they're exploring different materials and that they're made available and the children have choices. So that's one of the things. Do you see, let me see, are the children given ample time for play and exploration? It's kind of along the same line, but, you might just want to ask what's their schedule. Like if you see something, how long do they get to do this? If it's like super brief, and we're talking 15 minutes of play inside, is probably not long enough. But if the teacher says, we'll be here for the next, 45 minutes to an hour or longer, that's preferable. You don't want a really brief time in centers and then it's time to clean up and move somewhere else, or the children aren't getting the benefit from that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of your child's day, you're going to want to find out what the schedule looks like to see whether it's packed full of teacher agendas or time is given for children to have time to explore and play and build friendships and develop social skills and all of the necessary things that play offers them, and they need time for that. And that time should be respected.
Yeah, it takes time for that deep work that like any of us would want. It takes time to get to that state where it's really productive, and the same is true for play. That I think sometimes as adults we get so focused on just the agenda, the action of play. Like they played with blocks for 10 minutes. They played, check the box and move on. But to really get to all those benefits of play that we talk about, the social benefits, the cognitive benefits, it takes time for them just to get to the spot where they're doing that deep work, and then they need time in that state. So that's a really good point to make sure they're getting enough time, not just that they do play and that it is child-driven and not overly controlled, but that they have time to get into that deep state of play.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be tough to probably observe without just asking how long do they have. But if you look at the schedule and it says your child is going to start off with this, and then in 10 minutes go to this, and then 15 minutes go to that, and then in 20 minutes go to this, and then 15 minutes, and the whole day is like that, then play, it is not probably, that's a red flag that play is not necessarily the priority, even if they say they're a play-based school. Because play means all of those agendas and all of those little time slots for doing this and that and this and that and this and that are all set aside for this block of time that's all about the children directing their own learning, their own play. And that is critical. It is critical in early childhood development that young children gather together and negotiate and support each other in their learning and make choices and become independent and feel confident, and they do that through this time and play.
And there will be a balance, so there should be that chunk of child-directed play time. But they will still likely have some centers time, some small group time, large group time, and other things. So I just want to make sure it's clear for parents that they may see some places on the schedule that are 10, 15 minutes for those large group times or small group times where they're moving along. But what we're looking for is that chunk of child-driven, self-selected play.
Right. And so you want to just see a balance. And everything
Right.
you're looking for, in everything you're looking for as you go in, you're just looking for balance, things that seem normal. And if you go in and everything seems, wow, this is just amazing in terms of, if you walk away thinking, I can't believe how quiet they were the whole time, then find out why. Why were they so quiet? Was this really a good thing, or maybe this a red flag? It depends on why. It depends on what they were doing at the time. While the children are playing, you're going to see natural things happen. Something's going to fall. Someone's going to maybe get mad. Someone's going to be negotiating over a toy. Somebody's going to be asking the teacher for help. There's going to be things going on that are natural and normal. So observe how the teachers are responding, what kind of response they are, in what way are they interacting with the students during the time you're there. Do you like it? Do you feel like, wow, I love how she's just really responsive and she's paying attention and she's available and always kind and she has so much patience. I don't know how she does it. Those are all good things to come away with. If it's like she's over drinking a cup of coffee, you got a problem. And if she's sitting at a desk, we don't want that in early childhood. And hopefully you won't run into anything like that. Most places aren't like that. But let's say she's a little too abrupt, or she loses her temper, or she is overly strict. Then you want to make note of that, and whether or not you feel like it was the reaction was appropriate for the circumstance or not. And in your mind, would it be appropriate? So you want to think about how are the teachers interacting with the children, and what are they doing during that time to make sure that you need to be able to say to your child, you have a great teacher, and if your child comes home saying, Miss So-and-so got me in trouble today, you want to be able to support Miss So-and-so because you saw action and she had your child's best interest at heart. Not, oh, well, I'm going to go tell her. If you're that way, then you probably need to think about this. So you need to find a classroom where you feel like this teacher's going to have my child's best interest at heart. I saw her in action. She was always genuine with the children that she was serving. And if there's a problem pops up, you still have confidence in that teacher.
Mm-hmm. But that interaction is really powerful. I think that's to me, that's the key thing, that a teacher that, like you said, is engaging and responsive and respectful outweighs so many other factors, because as much as we would like to have every single thing that we talk about in this conversation, odds are it's hard to find a school that fits all of those, that's close to you, that's in your budget, has every single thing. And if I start narrowing down to my, a smaller must-have list, that teacher is probably the first thing on my list, that they are respectful and responsive and engaging, and the way they approach children and the way they approach education and teaching and learning is paramount to me.
And it should be. And I will tell you, from a personal standpoint, as a grandparent, we took my grandson last year to try out a preschool. Well, actually, we signed him and my granddaughter up for a preschool when they moved away, and we signed them up for a new preschool. And they were coming in right at the beginning of that school year. And the teacher of my grandson's class, there were two teachers in the room, they literally did not make eye contact and get down and speak to the children. Every time you brought them, they were distracted. And I thought the first time, it's just overwhelming. There's a lot of kids and it's the first couple of days. But by the third or fourth time we're bringing them, and they're still not taking time to say, good morning, welcome, I'm so happy to have you here, and call the child by name and look at them and take a minute and invite them into the classroom. They're not doing that, and they still weren't. And by then my grandson is not wanting to come to school. And this is a little boy who'd been coming to school every day forever, and now all of a sudden he doesn't want to go. And he was not connecting with these teachers, but that's on them. The teachers have to connect and take the time to connect with their students, and they do it all through the day, from the minute the children walk in to the minute they leave. And you want to see that effort being made to build connections, to be responsive, to be supportive, even in the hard. And it doesn't mean they won't make mistakes. It just means that you see them working to do the very best they can and being truly interested and engaged in being the best teacher they can be to their students. And so they're wanting to talk to you about their own life, about anything but classroom and your child and what they have in store. And if they never even speak to your child, I would be very concerned that if they've spoken to your child and they were warm to your child and share with you about what you answer your questions, hear your concerns, and share with you what they're excited about in their classroom, you're off to a really good start.
Mm-hmm. I think the opposite, and you alluded to this, that I'll tell people, if it looks like teachers are taking the lifeguard approach, when you see at the pool the lifeguard that sits up on that chair and they're way up above everything, but they're just kind of scanning and shouting out orders every once in a while. And that's the opposite of what we're looking for. Like you said, if they're not they need to be coming down to their level and making connections. And I love that you pointed out all day long they need to be making those connections and really, you see them. I had a mentor who said that the great thing about early childhood is you get lots of deep knee bends. It's really good exercise because you should be coming down to their level, and they should be making eye contact, like you said, using their names. That awareness, if you see that in a teacher, that's a teacher who, if they can connect with children, that can compensate for a lot of other things not being ideal and perfect. If there's a teacher who's connecting with children and being responsive all day long, that's powerful.
And sometimes I think as parents, it can be tempting to come in and focus on the connection you feel with the teacher, and I'm not saying that that's completely wrong, because you as a family need to feel comfortable in the environment that you're sending your child, especially a preschooler. But at the same time, you have to tune in to the connection the teacher's making with the students and put that the priority over the connection the teacher's making with you at this point. So if you feel like this is a teacher who's really warm and genuine to students, but maybe a little awkward with conversation with adults, I'm not worried about that. That's a good teacher. If I see a teacher that will sit over in the corner of the classroom and talk to you for 45 minutes and let her children and ignore her students for that entire time, and talk to you about everything and you just don't see, you're like, aren't you supposed to be doing something else right now? I would be concerned, because it's not you, it's somebody else. That you might be like, hey, we hit it off great. I really liked her. But what did you see her doing in response to taking, because in the end, you're not going to be there. This is about her connection with her students or your child, and whether or not you feel like you're leaving your child in good hands. And it is critical that you take the time to just observe the teacher in her world, in her environment, or his environment. It could be a guy teacher. It can be either. And you're like, and at some level you really have walked away with an appreciation for the efforts they made and the work that they're doing. And that way, when you walk away with that appreciation, you will feel more confident if your child's having a rough day or having an issue when you bring them to school, whatever that issue may be. It could be very simple, like just missing you, but you'll know that you trust that teacher because that teacher will have your child's best interest at heart. You want to feel like that's the case.
That's a great reminder. So if you're lucky enough to see the classroom in action, we talked a lot about what we're looking for in the teacher because that's so critical. Is there something you would be looking for as you watch the children interacting in the classroom?
Well, you're probably going to be listening to a lot of their language, how they're talking to each other. It's a really tough thing. It depends on your community, but I think you're going to just listen to the language they use, what seems to be appropriate in that environment, whether there is a lot of conversation going on. There should be, and whether you see them, being aware of one another, being aware that there's rules whether they're written or not. We're not supposed to do that kind of thing. It's really just about watching children communicate, negotiate, be kind to one another. Is there an effort made, and you see that effort you see the presence of good modeling and good teaching coming through the children's practices and behaviors. If you see children walking around kicking each other's things over and pulling hair and pinching, okay, that classroom needs some help. It's not that you can't have somebody cry and get upset. That happens every day, but it depends on the level of how predominant that is happening in the classroom and how skillful the teacher is in helping the children manage that. But what I look for is when I'm going in a classroom, I just look for daily natural interactions that would be childlike and friendly and fun and investigative and interesting and curious and imaginative, and you be the mommy, I'm the daddy kind of play. You want to hear normal child verbiage going on. If you hear something that seems extreme and outside of the norm, then you want to find out, why that is, or even think about why that might be. I think that the biggest thing is knowing that if the room is just super quiet and you don't hear any noise, that probably concerns me than hearing lots of children negotiating and trying to figure it out. If you don't ever hear any laughter, why is that? They should be laughing. They should be silly sometimes. There should be, sometimes you can walk in and it's ear-piercing loud because, it depends on the setup of the classroom. It could be very loud, but don't let loud be a deterrent because loud could mean the way the classroom's set up and everything's going on at one time and the kids are used to it. It's just a shock to your system. But loud is one thing. Meanness is another. So you want to hear an atmosphere that feels busy and loud or even comfortably noisy, and children talking, laughing, taking turns, pretending, negotiating, maybe even getting a little aggravated with each other, but being either able to work it out or the teacher's able to intervene, depending on the situation. So those are the things that I would think as far as the children. I think it's also, what are they doing with their hands? Are there things out and available that these children are engaged in? If you see children running wild around the classroom, the question is, what should they be doing? We know they should be doing something. And what is that? So we want to make sure, is it that there isn't anything out that's engaging and keeping the children engaged, or is it that it's a time of day and they were just cleaned up and these two little guys just took advantage of the moment? So you have to know that. But we want to see if it's during your average playtime, there ought to be things that there ought to be purpose in their play. So if they're talking, it's because they're talking about the paints they're using, or they're talking about their pretend play and housekeeping, or they're talking about the animals and the blocks and building. If they're negotiating, it's because somebody knocked over their blocks. It's not because they're bored and they're standing around with nothing to do.
That's a good point. And I love that you pointed out that you can tell that there's purpose in their play. And not to say that it's necessarily being adult directed, but like you said, that they're engaged and that we can see that it's organized in a sense. It's organized play. And again, that doesn't mean that it's adult controlled, but that it's organized, that the children have organized their play, that they're engaging and interacting, and not just, as you said, that they're not just left with nothing to do and causing problems in that.
Exactly. And the thing is that as a parent, it can be overwhelming to, we both are, been doing this a really long time. So all of this comes so natural to us to walk in, and we can probably tell in about 3 minutes what that classroom pretty much is all about and where there's needs or not needs. Having a parent walk in and do that is extremely difficult. And so that's where you had talked about the role of the teacher, and that not only do parents have a responsibility in finding the school that's going to be the right fit, but the teacher can help a lot by walking the parent through what's happening in her classroom in that moment. Going ahead and saying, this is what we're doing, and this is where we're at, and this is what will be coming up next, and feel free to hang out. If you have any questions, ask me. Tell them where they need to be. When we have children come with the parent, we actually invite the child to come and play with us. So most of them do. It depends on your environment, what you can or can't do. If we're having snack, we invite the child to come and sit with us at snack. They almost always say yes. I'm not sure why. And they also snack with us. And if we're pouring our own juice, they are invited to try to pour their own too. And usually it's funny watching the parent, because they're over there going, they're going to spill it, they're going to spill
right.
it. And we're like, but we're usually right there because we know it's new for them and they're very young. Mm-hmm. And so we assist, or we have an older student assist depending on we're a mixed age group. So we sometimes have our older students assist. And then, but we basically participate in that interview. We participate in that tour. Not by stopping and having a conversation about where she lives and mutual friends we know, but by stopping and directing the parent on what's possible, where we're at, what's going on right now, and then and helping that parent get acclimated so that they do feel comfortable asking questions. And a lot of times that in itself as a teacher, is valuable to helping that parent select you, because you see the need all around, and you're addressing everyone's needs, not just, including the parent. So as a parent, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, and we probably should just keep coming back to that. The teacher really is one of the most dynamic reasons that you'll be in that classroom, because the teacher's the one that sets the tone for everything that happens, no matter what the school policies are, no matter how great the director is, no matter how wonderful the classrooms are. The teacher themselves are what makes the difference. So take time, see if you can take time to speak with them and get to know them. And hopefully you'll have a teacher that's not too shy and withdrawn, but one that,
right.
that is, mature enough to really have a conversation with you. And so, but if they are not necessarily adult oriented very, very comfortably and naturally, some people aren't, then pay attention to how they interact with their students, because ultimately that's what matters.
Yeah. And I think you made a really great point from the professional side of the scenario, a great reminder for professionals that, like you said, that we as professionals know, I can walk into a classroom, survey and observe for a while and come away knowing, what I saw and what it meant. But as professionals, when we have parents come in, we have a responsibility to do some educating as well, because they may come in and see this great play-based scenario and think that was chaos, or that was, So I think it's important for us, whether it's, like you said, it'd be so great to have conversations with the teacher, or whether it's an orientation type meeting or discussion, or if it's in some kind of a pamphlet, but that we as professionals, as I talk to professionals, I'll often remind them that we teach children, but we're also teaching parents. And if we can't communicate to them why we do what we do, we can't expect them to value that we're doing that if we can explain to them our purpose and why it's important, then they will start to see what we see and value what we value. And so there's a great reminder there to educate parents along the way also.
Right from the very first day. I mean, not, just you're doing it in a way that's not you're talking down to them, and as if, you're a better parent than they are. Right. So you want to be sensitive to that. But you are the expert in the classroom, and they will value that as you share. Just genuinely share. This is what we're doing now. I was hoping it would turn this way, but it turned out that way, so we're just rolling with it. I would love that. I would love a teacher to tell me that, and I would respect that. You're going to have some parents, and I'll talk both directions, who come in and have a very specific plan they want to have. I have parents that come in and say, do you guys learn the alphabets, numbers, color, shapes, whatever, very academic oriented. And so you have to be able to speak to all kinds of parents and what they feel like is the most important thing that their child needs. And, you might not agree with them, and the parent may just not know any other way. So the more you can just have conversations about, this is what we do, this is how we approach this is what we make as our priority. And I think you just have to be really honest and be who you are with the parent. And the parents need to know coming in that you may have one agenda, but go in there and discover what early childhood is truly about versus what you thought it was about. It might be different, and it might be even better. I mean, you might find that this is really cool. So have an open mind. Don't come in and be so stringent on what you think your child should be learning during this time. Go in and discover what your child should be experiencing.
Mm-hmm. That's a great reminder. And I think in that you touched on an important thing that, just as you mentioned at the outset, that there are different environments that are better suited to different children, to not get too caught up that there's one right answer for your child. And the flip side of that for us as professionals is to realize that not every child is the right fit for our environment, to not take it personally when parents don't send their children to our environment, that it's better for everyone when there's a good match. And so to not to take it personally or feel it's a failure if a child or if a parent chooses to send their child to a different setting, that can work out better for everyone, that we don't want to create more of a rift there than there needs to be, but to not take it personally, that there are different aspects of the environment that are better fits for different children and for different families.
And it's really hard to do as teachers. I'll tell you, we really want parents to like us, and we really want them to come and give us a chance and give us the opportunity. And it's really hard for us to let go. And so I think that parents need to do what is definitely best for their children and what they believe is best for their family and what fits really well for them, and not be swayed by, you don't want to hurt a teacher's feelings. And at the same time, we as teachers have to be very open with them. This is what we teach. This is what, you don't say what you think the parent wants to hear. Tell them about your program. Tell them about what you do and let them decide. You may be surprised how many have walked in the door saying, I want my child to learn this, this, and this. And then they hear you and they're like, oh, okay, I want that too. And they have a different perspective. So tell them, be genuine about who you are, what you do, and what it is that you're going to be facilitating throughout that child's school year, so they have a very clear understanding of what kind of school and program that they're getting ready to sign their child up, and they're not spending time through the school year, feeling frustrated or confused. They genuinely understood. And that doesn't mean they won't have questions along the way or even some of the same concerns, but you guys will have opened a very open, fluid dialogue that will help both of you. You'll both learn from it.
Yeah, you have to start from a genuine place there.
Now, I think that other things that, so depending on what time of day you go in, you're going to see, if you can come in during center times, I think you can learn the most during that time. Sometimes you might come in circle time, where they're all seated on the carpet, and you'll get to see the teacher sort of do her magic during circle time and see if the children are engaged and interested in interacting with her and having conversations with her or him. So depending on the time of day, snack time, are the children serving their own snack? Are they talking? Do they get to choose their own seat? Do you feel like you're seeing them be friends with each other? Or is it silence through the whole thing and no one can talk? I would say it's a red flag.
Definitely.
But it's depending on the time of day, it's all about just seeing natural children interactions. If you can't come into the school during the school hours, and we already talked about just general observations you can make, but there are questions you can ask over the phone and that you could just maybe see if you can get. You could ask them for a copy of their daily schedule. You could ask about the teacher's background and the length of time in the program and in the classroom. A teacher may be in the program for 4 years, but just starting in class in that age group that year. Mm-hmm. That would be helpful to know. Doesn't mean she can't do a good job, but it's helpful to know. And the school's learning philosophy, what is their philosophy as a school on learning? Sometimes the teacher's philosophy, their take on it, will go in a direction that's a little different than what the school tells you. So it's good to ask, what is the school's, and then ask the teacher, tell me about you. Because we bring in our own personalities to these classrooms. Mm-hmm. And then, what's the parent's role there? I mean, you really need to know that. Is there an open door policy? Can I drop in anytime and see my child once I bring them to school? Or do I need to make an appointment or wait till school's out? What are the rules? Every school's different. And you have to see if you're comfortable with that. And, what is it a co-op? What kind of school? Also pay attention to the kind of school. A parent co-op, you would be required to serve in some capacity throughout the school year. My daughter, for example, couldn't do a parent co-op because she has 4 children, all under the age of 4 or under the age of 5. And she would be dragging all of the younger ones with her, and that was not going to work. So, she had to find a school that was different because she couldn't commit to serving. Other parents love it because it gives them a chance to really get involved, and they want to be involved.
Well, and what I found when I taught in a co-op type format, one of the pieces of feedback I kept getting from the parents was how much they learned by being in the classroom, by watching what we model as teachers. And so as parents, when you're making that choice and you're thinking, I want the break of preschool, I don't want to go in, don't underestimate how much you're definitely serving and helping, you're contributing, but don't underestimate how much you get from it as well. You'll learn hopefully you'll be learning some great techniques from watching a wonderful teacher that can teach you some things about moderating and conflict management and just perspectives about education that can be a real benefit to you.
Absolutely. I think there's so many advantages to having, neither one is a right or wrong. They both have advantages. Again, it's about what's the right fit for you and your family. So the type of school in that context is really boils down to just what's going to work for you. And they all have the parent co-ops. People who have been in parent co-ops for years highly recommend them, and they love them. Other parents who really just want a break and they don't want, they need a preschool where they can feel very comfortable going to shopping or to breakfast or whatever and then coming back. That's, there's all different reasons for our choices.
And that can be very valid. I mean, I don't think parents need to feel that that's, like you said, that's not the wrong answer. Sometimes the right answer for our family, for our child, and for that moment, that season, is something that is completely separated. Sometimes that's just necessary.
Absolutely. And so I think sometimes it's doing everybody, so we just need to find out what it is. Mm-hmm. I think, but also we want to know the discipline policy. So if there's school-wide discipline policy versus how does the teacher handle discipline? And that's a fair question to ask. How do you, handle discipline? And you're going to have to listen and feel like, and see if you feel comfortable with that, and if it lines up with what the school as a whole says. And every school is going to be a little different in what and how they communicate that with you. But most of us are kind of on the same page, I think, with discipline and what's appropriate. But you just want to take the time to ask about it. If there's a written policy versus what the teacher's telling you, what happens if my child does something that she's not supposed to? What is the process? How do you handle that? And let them talk you through it. A lot of them will say, they do a lot of redirection. What I would stay away from are teachers that either can't answer the question, and it's probably because they're not doing something that's very constructive, or their answers, they send them to the principal's office, or it's cut and dry. Well, they get 3 chances and they're out. Then I'd probably keep looking. I'm like, that's not the school for you. And even if you have the best child, that's probably not the school for you. Late policies. This is just kind of as a side note. If you have trouble getting anywhere on time, then you need to pay attention to their late policy.
Right, and because some schools will charge you extra.
Yeah, some schools will charge you extra. Some schools, I've even heard of schools, I don't do this, I've even heard of schools that if you're past 20 minutes late in the morning, you're not allowed to bring your child that day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, people are really cracking down on that stuff. So find out if there's a late policy and how strict they are with that. But either way, it comes back to the very beginning where I talked about finding a school that you can reasonably get to and get to on time. And the reason for that is so that you begin to build the skills of your child, your family, your lifestyle. This is a chance for you to begin to figure out what is it like to go to school and do it in a kind of a more simple way. And then as your child gets ready for kindergarten, you already have established healthy habits. As we know, when they get into elementary school, they're less tolerant, even more so.
Right.
Being charged or not.
It helps with that transition in preschool as well, especially if you're having issues with, adjusting. It's always an adjustment for a child to adjust to a new environment. And if we can be consistent in that routine and not feel like we're rushing or coming in at different times at different points of the daily routine, if we can take all of that away, it's going to help quite a bit with the child's transition to that new environment, that new part of their schedule.
Yes, there is every reason to get your child there on time or early. That is for the benefit of your child. And so if you know you're going to have a problem with that, that's why we want to look at a school that's within, that's going to be manageable for you. But if you know that's a problem, you need to pay attention to that late policy and find out what they say. And then, so I think, there's just, I want to kind of go, if you think about the big picture and you only have two, maybe you got to come in with maybe 5 points. These would probably be my 5 or 6 points. And the first one is when you walk into a school, think in terms of experiences, hands-on exploration and discovery. Are you seeing different kinds of experiences that your child will get to be part of? You want to know that that's happening. And do you see children engaged in different experiences? That would be first, or one. The second one is, do you see a focus on child development and social emotional, a teacher that's nurturing, that's, connecting with their children, responsive to their children? Where does that teacher land in your estimate of good teaching? And is that teacher kind of fit into that? Did you feel comfortable, and did you like what you saw that teacher doing? Location, where's the location? And the school as a whole, does it feel in a genuine way warm, inviting, nurturing, creative, engaging, interesting, challenging? Did you feel like there was a sense of community? And did you feel like, hey, this is the community I think I might enjoy, and that my child will enjoy? So both matter, but particularly your child.
This is such a great list. You're such a great resource for parents and for teachers. This is really helpful. Is there anything else? I feel like everything on my list you hit on and added more to. Is there anything else that you feel like is the one last thing that you haven't been able to address?
How about outside?
Oh, yes.
Just for a minute outside. I remember reading, actually I didn't read it. One of my assistants wrote an article on our behalf, and I edited it. And she started the article saying, if you ever drive by a child care center or a place where they don't have any playground, and she listed like playground equipment and things that you should see out in the yard, then you should keep driving because it's not a good school, right? And I laughed because I had to ask her. I was like, we don't have any playground equipment in our. I'm like, so we just lost all of our students. And she's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. So when you think about outdoors, if you can take a look at their environment and find out how they use their environment, is there a playground and a place to play? Do they spend any time going outside? Do they enjoy nature? Is there woods? Do they take walks? What do they do when they go outside? I think we underestimate how critical outdoor playtime is to these children and their development at this age. And you want to know that I would have a red flag if the teacher says, well, we don't go outside during the months of January, February, and March. Boy, your child would be missing out on a wonderful opportunity for those seasons. So you want to find out how they integrate outdoor play and what do they use. A red flag is back to the issue of discipline. This comes to my mind because of if a child is in trouble and then they're willing to take away 5 minutes of outdoor playtime to kind of be the discipline action, and that is just something that that's just not a good idea. Young children, need. I don't know. You can probably take this part out because that's just me complaining now.
No, I think that's I think that's a common feeling. That this is an important part of their day, an important part of their development, and it's not something that should be on the table for punishment.
Yeah, we want to preserve, just like we talked about indoors where they have that time for play and exploration, we want to know that the teacher makes getting the children outside and preserves that time. And you might ask the teacher, what kinds of things do you plan for outside? Now, we want to let outdoor play a lot of times be the place where they run and get their energy out. But there's a lot of things the teacher can do to also implement and create interesting explorations outside. So you might ask, do you ever do anything interesting outside besides just play on that jungle gym? Especially if there's not really anything but a little jungle gym outside. The kids will be so happy to be outside that maybe that jungle gym is enough, I will tell you. But if you see a very simple outdoor environment, then ask, is there ways the teacher supplements time outdoors? And what is the policies on weather and getting outside year round? And how much time do you spend? And what other things do you do? Those are great questions to ask. It encourages the teacher to remember how important outside time is too. But young children need socially, emotionally, for their memories, for their senses, time outside. And it doesn't have to be a fancy play yard. It just needs to be thoughtful and the people involved thoughtful in how they do their outdoor time. So, what are the rules of playing outside? And if you go outside and view it, do you see any real safety risk that you think are worth asking about? In my yard, my play yard is nothing but woods and rocks that the kids call the cliffs and the forest. Okay?
I love it.
And so if you've never been around that, you're going to think there's nothing but safety risk in my play yard. Because we have our cliffs and forests out back, and that's where they play, and our log piles that are over their head. So we have, an unusual setting. So depending on what kind of school you have, if you're going to a nature-based school, it's going to be one expectation. If it's not, it's going to be another. And what they're allowed to do will also differ. But so you want to go and find out, based upon the kind of school they are, the kind of outdoor environment they have, what their outdoor play philosophy is, and find out how that adds value to the rest of the program, or whether or not it does at all. That's probably not going to be your biggest priority, but it's good to know, and you might find that it becomes your child's biggest priority. So it's good to kind of have that in your mindset.
And it can be indicative of other parts of their philosophy. That question can lead to other discussions, because there are, again, we have this dream list, and just different conditions may apply in different areas and situations. And so they may not have the most ideal outdoor policy or outdoor facilities. But by asking that question, you may find out it's not because we don't value outdoor play, it's just because of our location or where our center is right now, but we do incorporate nature and outdoor things into our classroom in this way, or can also give you an understanding of how you might be able to supplement if it's less ideal in their amount of outdoor play, then you as a parent know that, after preschool we'll go spend some time outdoors, or that you can do some supplementing as well. But I think it can start a really great conversation just by asking. Even if you look around and you don't see your ideal answer, by asking you can understand what their philosophy of it is, even if it's not expressed in what they have access to right now.
Yeah, I think you hit on such a good statement to say, and that is just about having, if you can connect with the teacher or the leaders or both and have a conversation about early childhood education. You asking lots of questions. Tell me about this. What do you guys do? What's the expectation? What will my child do? I noticed that. Could you tell me more about that? Just ask a lot of questions, not in a way that says I'm testing you or I'm checking you out, but in a way that gets a dialogue going about early childhood education. And you will learn a lot about what matters to them and what their beliefs are, and whether or not you feel like they're on par with what you're looking for. Have a conversation.
And as you mentioned before, being open to something new, being open to discovering that there may be more than what you were looking for, that you may not go in and find the answers you thought you were looking for, but you might find something better, and that's something to be open to as well.
Definitely, and it can be actually very fun for you if you go in with that mentality. You'll enjoy the experience. If you go with such a rigid set of this is what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad, it can be a very stressful experience trying to find the right preschool. Because I'm here to tell you there's probably not one that's going to fit exactly what you think it should do. Right. So you need to go in and think more relationally, first of all, in terms of the teacher's relationship with the children and you and the schools. And then second of all, think about all the other elements of the school, philosophically speaking, and the classroom setup and classroom environment. All of that stuff almost has to come secondary. So if just like if you were going to go and meet to a meet and greet and meet new people, you would first get to know them and get to know about them before you walk away making a decision whether you ever want to see them again. And you have to come in very open-minded, and the more you can really ask questions and listen and just kind of get them talking about what they're experts in, the teachers, and if the teachers are willing to just really share with you what they do and they love and why they're there and what matters, everybody's going to learn so much more, and they're going to come and make a decision based on really, really good information that they can lean on as school begins. It should be fun. Finding a preschool can be a little stressful, I'm going to tell you. But once you're there, you should love it. It should be fun. It should be just something you really enjoy and get excited about with your child. And once you make the decision, decide that you're all in and talk to your child, talk it up to your child, help them be excited. If you've got red flags at that point, which you're still planning on sending them, you better not let your child know that. Keep that to yourself at this point and find another way to address them so that your child goes, because this is going to be your child's teacher and your child's school. And we want that child to love it, to absolutely love it.
That is what we hope for. Well, Deborah, thank you so much. You have such a wealth of knowledge, and I know I've said it many times. I wish that you were closer so I could send all of my kids to your school. I wish that every child could have an experience like I see the children in your school having. So thank you for sharing what you know so that more children can have that opportunity.
Well, thank you. I just love talking about early childhood, and I hope that something in all of this did not overwhelm your listeners, but would definitely encourage them and give them a little guidance along the way.
Definitely. Thank you. Thanks again for listening to Not Just Cute, the podcast. You can find show notes, including links to Deborah's blog, book, and social media platforms at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 14. While you're there, make sure you download the free quick reference guide that summarizes some of the big ideas from our discussion, and it gets you jump-started in asking all the right questions as you check out preschools. That's all at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 14. I'm Amanda Morgan. You can read more about intentional whole child development on my blog, Not Just Cute, and sign up for the Not Just Cute newsletter. That's at notjustcute.com. And follow me on Facebook. That's facebook.com/notjustcute. Thanks for listening today, and thank you for standing up for children and for childhood.